What if Tywin Lannister learned Jon Snow's true parentage? What if a single sheet of parchment could unmake a kingdom? What if the most dangerous weapon in all of Westeros was not steel, not fire, not gold, but knowledge, held in the hands of the one man, patient enough to understand its worth? The smoke of the Blackwater still hangs over King's Landing when it comes to him. Not as an army comes, with banners and drums, but quietly, the way all things of true consequence arrive in the presence of Tywin Lannister. A wounded man of the Kingsguard, fevered and half drowned in his own dying, speaks words he ought never to have spoken, and an old maester, long dead now, has left behind a letter sealed with wax gone brittle with the years. Both find their way, through hands that do not know what they carry, to the hand of the king. Tywin reads it once, he reads it again, and then he sets it aside. He is not a man given to belief. Belief is a weakness of smaller minds, the currency of septons and fools. What Tywin trusts is pattern, the cold architecture of cause and consequence, the way a thing must fit against the things around it, or else be a lie. And the parchment before him does not lie so much as whisper. It suggests. It hints at a shape half seen in shadow, and Tywin Lannister has spent a long life learning to distrust shadows that move on their own. Yet he cannot forget it. That is the trouble. The letter speaks of Eddard Stark, of a bastard, of a boy raised in the cold halls of Winterfell under the name of Snow. And here is the thing that will not release its grip on Tywin's mind. The mismatch, the flaw in the timber. Eddard Stark was a man carved entirely from honor, rigid, humorless, tediously righteous, the sort of man who would sooner lose his head than bend, and who very nearly did. Such a man does not father a bastard. Such a man does not carry the shame of infidelity home, to lay before a young wife and hold it there for years, a living reproach beneath his own roof, when a word to any village woman could have hidden the child forever. It does not fit, and Tywin has never in his life been able to leave a thing that does not fit. So he begins, as he begins all things, with the ordering of small facts. He summons Grand Maester Pycelle, that old serpent who bows too low and remembers too much, and he frames his request as an idle curiosity, the reminiscence of an aging man recalling the years of the war. When did Lord Stark ride south from the Trident? When did he take his men to the mountains of Dorne, to the tower they called Joy? When did word come of the Lady Lyanna's death within those walls? And when? Tywin lingers here, softly, as a man lingers over a wine he has decided is corked. When did Eddard Stark return to the north with an infant in his arms? Pycelle answers, pleased to be useful, unaware that he is laying stones in a wall he cannot see. And Tywin gathers the dates one by one, arranging them in his mind, the way a general arranges companies before a field. No one has ever set these dates side by side. That is the marvel of it. Each fact has lived alone, harmless, a single thread in a tapestry no one thought to weave. But Tywin weaves, and when the threads draw together, when the timeline of that distant war stands complete before him, a chain forms, link by link, that leads to a single, unbearable conclusion. A woman dead in a tower in the south, a promise, perhaps, a newborn carried north through winter roads, and a man too honorable to lie about anything, except this, except a child he claimed as his own shame to protect it from a truth far more deadly than shame. Tywin sits alone in the hand's chambers as the candles gutter low. He does not move. He understands now what he holds, and it is not a rumor, not a scandal, not a lever against the Starks. It is something far greater and far more perilous, a Targaryen heir the last son of Rhaegar, the dragon's blood raised as a northern bastard, hidden in plain sight for 17 years beneath the very noses of the men who would have killed him in his cradle. A weapon, that is what the boy is. A weapon more dangerous than any host Tywin could raise, than any castle he could take, than any marriage he could arrange. And weapons, Tywin knows, belong in the hands of the man who understands them, not Cersei, who would blunder and boast and spill the secret in a fit of temper, not Varys, who trades in whispers, not Littlefinger, who would sell the truth to whoever paid most and set the realm alight for sport. The truth must be verified, and it must be verified in silence. Tywin reaches for a fresh sheet of parchment, and his hand does not tremble. What does a man do when he holds a secret too heavy for banners? He does not shout it. He does not write it plainly, where an intercepted rider or a curious maester might unravel his design. He selects the quietest instrument in his possession, and he wields it with the delicacy of a surgeon. If you're enjoying this alternate history of Westeros so far, please consider subscribing, as I upload new stories every single day. Now, let's continue with the story. The man Tywin chooses is not a Lannister. That is the whole of the point. He is a hedge knight named Sir Colan of the Vale, a landless sword who has served the Old Lion for 11 years without complaint and without questions. A man whose loyalty was purchased not with love, but with the certainty that no other master would ever pay him half so well. He wears no crimson. He carries no lion upon his shield. He is nothing, a wandering blade seeking a place along the wall, one of 100 such men who drift north each year toward the Black Brotherhood and its endless hunger for bodies. He will pass unremarked. That is why he is chosen. The instructions are given in the privacy of the solar, spoken low, repeated once. Observe the boy. Mark his face, his manner, the color of his hair, and the set of his eyes. Learn who stands near him and who does not. Learn whether he is loved, whether he is watched, whether the old bear favors him or fears him, and then return and speak of it to no one save the Hand himself. Sir Colan does not ask why. He has learned, across 11 years, that the questions a man does not ask are the questions that keep him breathing. He bows. He rides north before dawn. And Tywin turns to the more delicate labor, the labor of appearing to care about nothing at all. For a man in his position cannot simply gaze toward the wall without the whole court gazing with him. Cersei watches him always, hungry for weakness, alert to any interest that might exclude her. Joffrey is a blade with no hand upon the hilt, liable to swing at anything that catches the light. Varys hears the walls breathe, and so Tywin does what he has always done best. He builds a fog. He manufactures crises, small ones, tedious ones, matters of grain shipments and border disputes, and the endless squabbling of lesser lords, each engineered to consume the council's attention and to make his own restless energy read as nothing more than the ordinary vigilance of a hand managing a fractured realm. When the North is mentioned, he mentions it too, the Stark rebellion, the wildling threat gathering beyond the wall, the tactical necessity of understanding one's enemy. His interest is armored in the obvious. He speaks of Robb Stark's host and the danger it poses, and every word is true, and every word conceals the single thread he actually pulls. Cersei suspects nothing because there is too much to suspect. He gives her a dozen shadows to chase, and she chases them all, and she finds the boy at the wall not worth a moment's thought. A bastard, a boy in black. What use is such a thing to anyone? Weeks pass. The candles burn down and are replaced. Tywin waits with the patience of a man who has learned that haste is the enemy of certainty, that a plan revealed too soon is a plan already failing. He does not send a second rider. He does not ride again. He simply waits and governs and lets the fog thicken. And then Sir Colin returns. He comes travel-worn and saddle-sore, his cloak gray with the dust of the King's Road, and he is brought to the solar in the deep of night, when the keep sleeps and the guards are few. Tywin dismisses even his own men. He wants no ears. Sir Colin speaks plainly, as instructed, and his account is careful, unadorned, the report of a man who has seen a thing he does not fully understand. The boy has stark coloring, he says, dark of hair, gray of eye, the look of the north in his bones. And yet there is something in the shape of the brow, something in the long melancholy of the face, something that does not belong to the wolves at all. Sir Colin cannot name it. He is a hedge knight, not a herald, and the great houses and their bloodlines are beyond his study. But he has stood in the presence of many faces, and this one, he says, wears a sorrow older than 17 years. And there is more. The boy has taken the black. He has spoken his vows. He has bound himself to the Night's Watch for life, forsworn from all inheritance, from all land, from all title, removed, by his own hand, from every game that Tywin might have played with him. Tywin sits very still. He does not speak. He turns the report over in his mind like a coin between two fingers, and he sees, already, that the vows change nothing at all. What is a vow, after all, to a man who has spent his life watching vows bend and break beneath the weight of necessity? A vow is a wall built of words, and words can be unspoken. Men are released from the wall when it suits the realm to release them. Sworn brothers have been pardoned before, pulled back into the great game by a king's hand or a lord's coin, and the boy who kneels tonight in the cold darkness of Castle Black may yet be raised by a warmer power at some later hour. The vows remove Jon Snow from the board only if Tywin permits them to. And Tywin has never in his life permitted a useful thing to be lost through carelessness. So he begins, in the quiet of his solar, to weigh the boy the way a moneylender weighs coin. What is he worth alive? What is he worth dead? These are not idle questions. They are the whole of the matter, and Tywin has never been a man to flinch from arithmetic simply because the sums are made of flesh. Consider first the danger. A living son of Rhaegar Targaryen, whatever his cloak, whatever his oath, is a claim that walks and breathes. Claims do not require armies to be dangerous. They require only that men learn of them. Should the wrong voice whisper the wrong truth to the right ears, the North might rally to a dragon dressed as a wolf, and Robb Stark's rebellion, already a bloody nuisance in the field, might harden into something worse, a rebellion with a king's blood at its heart, and a legend to march behind. That is the peril. A single boy, unarmed and unaware, holds within his veins the power to unmake everything the Lannisters have bled to secure. And yet a danger is only a danger while it belongs to your enemies. Turn the coin, and the same boy becomes something else entirely. A Targaryen who owes his very breath to Lannister mercy. A dragon whose secret is held in a Lannister hand. Tywin lets the thought unfold slowly, the way a general lets a plan mature before he commits his men to it. Robb Stark fights for northern independence, for the honor of his murdered father, for the memory of the wolves. But what becomes of northern loyalty when the North learns that its cause was founded upon a lie, that the bastard it sheltered was no bastard at all, but the true-born heir of the very dynasty the Starks helped to overthrow? Loyalty is a fragile thing. It fractures along the seams of shame. He sees the wider board now, laid out before him in the dark. Robb Stark in the Riverlands, winning battles and losing the war he does not yet know he is losing. Stannis Baratheon on his island of stone, grinding his teeth over a claim as cold and joyless as the man himself. And across the narrow sea, the Targaryen girl, Daenerys, they call her, gathering something in the deserts of Essos, sellswords or ships, or worse, a name that will not die no matter how many years pass. 3 claimants, 3 fires burning at the edges of the realm. And here, in the frozen north, an unmarked 4th piece that no one but Tywin knows to be a piece at all. To burn such a card would be the act of a lesser man. Assassination is the tool of the frightened and the crude, and Tywin Lannister is neither. A knife in the dark ends a thing forever, and forever is a long time to be wrong. Kill the boy, and the danger dies, yes. But so does every use to which the boy might be put. You cannot spend a coin you have thrown into the sea, and there is the risk of the deed itself. Assassins talk, assassins fail. Assassins draw the very attention their work is meant to bury. No, the boy is worth more breathing than bled. So the decision assembles itself, piece by patient piece, in the mind of a man who has outlasted 3 kings. He will do nothing. He will do nothing. And in that nothing lies the whole of his design. The secret will be kept, sealed behind the discipline of a single memory. The boy will live, unknowing, at the edge of the world, and he will be watched, not menaced, not touched, merely observed, the way a farmer watches a seed he has planted in soil he does not yet need. Sir Colin will be paid for his silence, and paid again for his continued eyes. And when the hour comes, when Robb Stark's cause hangs by a thread, or when the North must be broken from within, or when a dragon must be raised to fight a dragon, then, and only then, will Tywin turn the card face up upon the table and let the realm behold what he alone has known. He reaches for parchment. He begins to write instructions that name no names. The candle gutters low, and the lion smiles at nothing at all. What if the most valuable piece on the board were the one no one else knew existed? What if a man could plan the annihilation of an entire house and, in the same breath, calculate how that annihilation would raise the worth of a boy sleeping in the cold at the top of the world? Tywin Lannister does not hesitate over the twins. The conspiracy is already in motion, already breathing, already fed by the wounded pride of Walder Frey and the patient treachery of Roose Bolton. A king who breaks a marriage oath invites his own undoing, and Robb Stark has broken his. This is the reasoning Tywin offers to himself, the clean and public logic, but beneath it runs a second current, colder and more private, and it turns upon a single thought that has taken root since Sir Colin's letter. The more thoroughly the Stark line is destroyed, the more precious the one surviving fragment of it becomes. The trueborn sons will fall, the direct line will be cut, and when the North looks for a name to rally behind, there will be only one left standing that carries any Stark blood at all. A boy at the wall who does not even know that his blood is not Stark's alone. He turns this over the way a jeweler turns a stone toward the light. Destroy the main line, and the bastard's value rises. Rise it does, not by anything the boy does, by subtraction, by the simple arithmetic of who remains. So the letters go out, and the twins do their work. The narration of that night belongs elsewhere, to those who bled upon its floor, and Tywin does not need to witness it to know how it ends. The music, the doors barred, the rains of Castamere rising over the sound of steel, a queen unborn, a king crowned in wolf's blood, his mother's throat opened last. It is done as he intended it done. at the cost of nothing he values, and the young wolf's cause dies in a single evening, the way a candle dies when a hand is cupped around it. Word reaches King's Landing in the ordinary way, folded into the ordinary flood of correspondence, and Tywin reads it without expression. Then he does the thing that will puzzle Roose Bolton for the rest of his careful, treacherous life. He installs Bolton as Warden of the North, as agreed. The Dreadfort's lord has earned his prize with his betrayal, and Tywin pays his debts. But into the instructions, buried among the ordinary provisions of stewardship and tax and hostage, he inserts a clause that fits nowhere and explains nothing. The bastard Jon Snow, currently sworn to the Night's Watch at Castle Black, is under the protection of House Lannister. No Bolton man is to move against him. No accident is to befall him. He is not to be touched. Roose reads it twice. He is a man who understands the uses of a bastard. He has fathered one himself, and he knows precisely how expendable such creatures are, how convenient their disposal, how quietly a boy in black can be made to vanish upon a wall at the edge of the world. That Tywin should protect one makes no sense. There is no advantage in it that Roose can name. He considers, briefly, that it may be sentiment, and dismisses the notion at once, because he has met Tywin Lannister and knows the man contains no sentiment at all. He considers that it is a test. He considers that it is a trap. In the end, he does what careful men do with instructions they cannot decode. He obeys them, and he watches, and he files the mystery away against the day it might make sense. It does not occur to him to ask why. Tywin has offered no why, and offering none is itself a kind of instruction. The absence is the message. Do not ask. At Castle Black, the news arrives like a wound. Sir Colin's next letter is brief and precise, the report of a man paid to observe rather than embellish. The bastard has learned of the Red Wedding, his mother's people slaughtered, his brother dead, his sisters scattered or lost. The boy has taken it inward, the agent writes, and it has not broken him. It has hardened him. He speaks less. He trains harder. He gives himself over more completely to the watch, as though the vows he has already sworn are the only family that cannot be taken from him at a wedding feast. Grief has made him grave. It has driven him deeper into the cause of the wall, and further from any thought of thrones or crowns, or the blood that might one day contest them. Tywin reads this alone, in the low light of his solar, and understands the single fact that matters within it. The boy still does not know. Grief has come to him, wearing a Stark's face, and he is mourned as a Stark's son, and beneath the mourning, the truth lies undisturbed, unsuspected, whole. The secret remains sealed. It remains his. He sets the letter down and reaches once more for the candle. What if a secret, however perfectly buried, cannot survive the presence of a man whose entire craft is the unearthing of buried things? What if the very stillness with which Tywin Lannister guards his knowledge becomes, to a certain kind of watcher, a sound louder than any confession? There is a man in King's Landing who hears silences. He has always heard them, and he has begun to hear this one. Varys does not announce his interest. That is not how the spider works. He arrives at the small council chamber powdered and perfumed and softly smiling, as he always does, and he takes his seat, and he folds his hands, and he watches the hand of the king with eyes that give nothing back. He has noticed something. It is a small thing, and small things are his particular study. Tywin Lannister does not concern himself with trifles. Tywin Lannister does not spend coin or attention on matters beneath his station, and yet there has been a thread of correspondence flowing north, discreet, sealed, unremarked upon in council, and it concerns a place Tywin has never cared for, and men Tywin has always despised. The Night's Watch, the Wall, and within that gray brotherhood, if Varys reads the pattern correctly, a single obscure recruit of northern birth. The eunuch tests him. He does it gently, the way one tests ice before trusting weight to it. During a session concerned with grain and coin and the endless accounting of a war too expensive to have been worth its winning, Varys turns the conversation, as if idly, toward the north, toward the great houses brought low, toward the scattered remnants of the Stark line. He speaks of bastards. He speaks of them lightly, musingly, the way a man might comment on the weather. How curious it is, my lords, that a bastard so often outlives the trueborn. How a low birth can be a kind of armor against the ambitions that murder princes in their beds. He lets the words hang. He watches for the flicker. He is very good at watching for the flicker. Tywin gives him nothing. Tywin gives him less than nothing. The hand of the king does not stiffen. He does not hesitate. He receives the remark as one receives a fly at dinner, an irrelevance to be brushed aside, and he redirects the counsel to the matter of the granaries with a flatness that is itself a kind of answer. But Tywin is no fool, and he understands precisely what has just occurred across the polished table. The spider has smelled something. The spider is casting a line into dark water to see what rises to it. And so Tywin makes his decision in the space of a heartbeat, the way he makes all his decisions, and he begins, very quietly, to lie. He gives Varys a scent to follow. Not a false trail hastily laid, for a clumsy deception would only sharpen the eunuch's appetite, but a plausible one, patient and layered. Over the following days, Tywin allows it to be known, not stated, never stated, but allowed, that his correspondence with the Wall concerns the wildling threat massing beyond it. He lets slip a concern for the defenses of the Watch, for intelligence on the movements of the free folk, for the strategic value of a stable northern frontier, while the realm remains fragile. It is a lie built entirely from truths. The wildlings do mass. The Wall is undermanned. A hand of the king might reasonably attend to these things. Varys, hunting for a secret, is offered instead a policy. And a policy, however dull, explains everything without revealing anything. Whether the spider believes it, Tywin cannot know. He proceeds as though the man does not, because to assume otherwise is to invite ruin. The single unbearable danger is not that Varys learns of a northern bastard. It is that Varys learns which bastard, and whose blood truly runs beneath the borrowed name, and carries that knowledge across the narrow sea to a silver-haired girl in Essos who hatches dragons, or whispers it into the ear of Stannis Baratheon, who already fancies himself the realm's last righteous king. Let either of them confirm what Tywin alone suspects, and the boy at the Wall ceases to be a secret. He becomes a claim. He becomes a war. And so, in the same motion by which he blinds the spider, Tywin turns the lie into governance. The Watch has begged the Crown for aid for years, and the Crown has answered those pleas with silence, because charity toward frozen men wins no battles in the south. Tywin reconsiders, not from mercy. Mercy has never entered his ledgers, but because a stable Castle Black is a castle he can watch, and a watched dragon is a sleeping one. He arranges for token support to travel north, a trickle of men, a measure of supplies, enough to keep the Brotherhood standing, and the boy within it fed and disciplined, and precisely where Tywin can see him. The order is drafted, the seal is pressed, and across the table, the spider is still smiling. What if the most dangerous man in the realm learned that death had begun to circle him, not with the clash of swords, but with a whisper? The spider is still smiling, And that is the first warning. Varys does not smile without reason, and the reason is rarely comfort. In the days that follow, the eunuch lets fall a phrase here, a fragment there, each one polished and placed with the care of a jeweler setting stones. Dangerous men are moving, he suggests. Men who have grown weary of the lion's shadow. He names no names. He offers no proof. He simply lets the possibility hang in the air like smoke, and then he withdraws, leaving Tywin to breathe it in and draw his own conclusions. Tywin draws them. He does not panic, because panic is a luxury of lesser men. He calculates. He considers which enemies have the reach, which have the reason, which have both. And because he cannot know the shape of the blade before it falls, he thickens every wall that might stop it. He doubles the guards outside his solar. He changes the hour at which he takes his evening meal. He alters the route by which he moves through the Red Keep, so that no man watching from the shadows can learn his habits and lie in wait. He tells no one why. He does not need to. And when the trial of his son collapses into ruin, when Tyrion is condemned and then, against all order, freed, the poison of that escape carries a private violence toward the man who fathered him. What Tywin does not know, in those hours, is how close the reckoning comes. A staircase climbed in darkness, a crossbow raised in hands that trembled with a lifetime of grievance. But Tywin has changed his routine. The room where his son expects to find him is empty. The bolt that would have ended the lion's reign is never loosed, because the target has moved, and moved for reasons Tyrion never suspected. Varys, in warning him of shadows, saved him from the one shadow he could not have named. Father and son become enemies without remedy. There is no bridge back across that water. Tyrion vanishes toward the coast, toward a ship, toward the wide gray narrow sea and the eastern cities beyond it, carrying his hatred like a coin he will spend later. And Tywin lives. He lives, and he continues, and that is the whole of the difference. A crossbow bolt would have changed everything. The absence of it changes nothing at all. So the game goes on. Cersei is a broken thing now, hollowed by the death of her golden boy, that poisoning at the wedding feast that took Joffrey before his cruelty could ripen further. She weeps and she rages, and she grasps at the reins of power with hands that shake. And Tywin does what Tywin has always done. He gathers what she drops. He becomes, in all but title, the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, regent for young Tommen, a gentler boy who signs what he is told to sign and asks few questions. The realm is his to shape now, without the friction of a mad grandson or a scheming daughter to blunt his edge. And the secret grows more precious in his keeping. He guards it now the way a man guards the single card that wins the game. The boy at the wall, the dragon in the snow, the linchpin of a design that no one else can see because no one else holds all the pieces. Tywin holds them, Tywin alone, which is precisely the flaw. He sees it one evening, sitting late in his solar with a cup of wine untouched at his elbow. If the secret lives only in his skull, then it dies when his skull does. And skulls, as recent nights have reminded him, are fragile things. All this careful architecture, this long, patient game, played across years and continents, collapses to nothing the moment his heart stops. The lie becomes worthless. The boy becomes anonymous. The advantage he has built dissolves like frost in morning sun. He cannot allow that. So he does the thing he has never done, the thing that runs against every instinct of a man who trusts no vessel but his own mind. He writes it down. In his own hand, by candlelight, he sets forth the truth of Jon Snow's blood, the union of ice and fire that made him, the strategic intentions Tywin has woven around that truth. He writes with precision, sparing nothing, so that whoever reads it will understand not only the fact but the purpose. Then he folds the parchment. He seals it with wax and with the lion's mark. And he summons a single maester, a man old and quiet, and bound by vows he has never once broken. And he places the sealed testament into those trembling hands with an instruction as cold as the wall it concerns. It is to be opened only upon his death, not before, not for any voice, any threat, any price. The maester bows, and Tywin watches him carry the secret out into the dark. What if the very institution meant to bury a man could instead elevate him? What if the exile designed to hide the Targaryen heir at the edge of the world became, without anyone intending it, the making of that heir into something dangerous? The raven comes on a gray morning. It carries word from the north, from that frozen seam where the realm ends and the old dark begins. Jon Snow has been elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. The boy who was sent to the wall to vanish now commands the wall itself. Tywin reads the message twice. He sets it down. He does not move for a long moment, and in that stillness, his mind is already at work, already turning the piece across the board to see it from every angle. Because this is not a simple thing. This is not good news, and it is not bad news. It is both, tangled together, and a lesser man would feel only one and miss the other entirely. Consider the complication first. A brother of the watch is a tool without a hand to hold it. He is buried in vows and obscurity, easy to reach, easier still to ignore. But a Lord Commander is another matter. A Lord Commander has authority. He has men who answer to him, castles under his charge, a voice that carries beyond the ice. He has become a figure the realm must reckon with, and a figure the realm reckons with is harder to move quietly, harder to bury a second time should burying become necessary. The boy has grown roots. Roots are difficult to pull. Now consider the opportunity. That same authority that makes Jon harder to control makes him infinitely more valuable to those who might one day need him. A nameless bastard is a rumor. A Lord Commander with Targaryen blood in his veins is a claim with a fortress behind it, an army of sworn men, a strategic position at the throat of the continent. If the truth of his birth were ever to matter, it would matter far more now than it did a week ago. The vessel has grown larger, and Tywin has always preferred a larger vessel. So he begins to write. The letter he composes is a masterwork of misdirection. It comes under the seal of the crown, framed as ordinary business, the natural correspondence between the hand of the king and a man newly raised to responsibility on the realm's most vital frontier. He offers congratulations, measured and formal, the sort a great lord extends downward to acknowledge a lesser one. He inquires after the state of the wall, the strength of the garrison, the threat of the wildlings gathering in the true north. He speaks of the crown's interest in a secure frontier. He offers, in careful language that promises nothing while implying much, the possibility of support. Every line has a second purpose. He is not merely writing, he is measuring. He wants to know the shape of the boy's mind. Does Jon write with ambition, with the coiled hunger of a man who sees his rise as a beginning rather than an end? Or does he write with the flat devotion of one who has surrendered himself entirely to his vows? Where is the honor, and where beneath it might there be a crack, a wound, a wanting that could one day be pressed? The reply comes weeks later, and Tywin studies it the way a jeweler studies a stone. The boy writes plainly. He writes of duty. He writes of the wildlings not as enemies to be crushed, but as men to be saved, and Tywin marks that carefully because it tells him something. The boy has mercy in him. Mercy is a lever. It is also a weakness. It is both, always both. And Jon writes with no hint that he suspects why the hand of the king should trouble himself with a bastard on the wall. Good. The ignorance is essential. A courted man who knows he is courted asks why. A man who does not know simply receives, and grows grateful, and grows obligated, and never once wonders what the giver is buying. So Tywin gives. He arranges a shipment north, not a lavish one. That would draw eyes and raise questions. A modest column of men, a measured store of supplies, enough to matter at Castle Black, without seeming to matter to the wider realm. But he lets the word spread all the same, through the small, deliberate channels he commands, that the watch endures because Lannister favor has willed it so, that the frontier holds because the lion chose to feed it. The perception costs nothing and purchases everything, an unspoken debt planted like a seed in frozen ground. And Jon Snow, receiving the grain and the swords, believing them the fruit of crown duty and nothing more, sends his thanks northward into the dark, unaware that every word he writes is being read by a man who already knows exactly what he is. The wagons roll, the debt takes root, and in his solar, Tywin begins to draft the next letter. What if the most dangerous man in the realm is not the one who commands armies, but the one who commands whispers? What if the true threat to Tywin Lannister's design is not a rival lord or a foreign queen, but a soft-spoken eunuch who has spent his entire life collecting the fragments other men discard? Varys has been listening for years. That is what Varys does. He listens, and he waits, and he assembles. A word from a dying Kingsguard, spoken decades ago, and remembered by a little bird who carried it faithfully across the years. A gap in the accepted history. A silence where a story should be. A prince who rode south and did not return. A lady who died behind a door no one was permitted to open. A bastard raised in the north by a man too honorable to ever explain himself. Separately, these are nothing. Together, they form a shape. And Varys has always been a man who sees shapes where others see only shadow. So he comes to Tywin, not with accusation, never with accusation. Varys does not accuse. He arrives in the solar with his hands folded into his sleeves, and his face arranged into that mild, powdered blandness that has fooled 100 cleverer men. And he speaks of the weather, and of the harvest, and of the small troubles of small people. And then, almost as an afterthought, he speaks of a name. Not the name. He is too careful for that. He speaks around it. He speaks of dragons that were thought dead and are not. He speaks of blood that was thought spilled and was not. And he watches Tywin's face for the flicker that will tell him whether the hand already knows. Tywin gives him nothing. Tywin has spent his life giving nothing. But Varys is not looking for confession. He is looking for intent. That is the true purpose of this visit, the reason he has walked into the lion's den, rather than simply boarding a ship for the east. Because Varys serves the realm. He has always insisted upon this, to others and to himself, that whatever he does for the stability of the whole. And a hidden Targaryen changes his arithmetic entirely. There is a dragon queen across the sea, gathering strength, gathering ships, gathering the certainty of righteous return. And if there is another Targaryen here, in Westeros, in Lannister hands, then Varys must know which horse the realm should carry. He must understand Tywin's intentions before he decides whether to remain and serve, or to slip quietly onto the water and cast his lot with the girl who breeds dragons in the ashes of a burned tent. He is very close to leaving. That is the thing Tywin must grasp in this moment, and does. The spider's bags are half packed in his mind. His flight is a decision already leaning toward completion. So Tywin does not deny. He negotiates. He turns to Varys and speaks of the realm as though the word belongs to him too, as though they are two craftsmen of the same trade, discussing the same beloved instrument. What does the realm require, he asks. Not vengeance, not conquest, not a foreign queen landing on foreign-fed swords to burn her way toward a throne she has never seen. The realm requires stability. It requires a settled succession, a peace that holds, a crown that does not shatter with every generation, and a Targaryen already here, already grown, already teachable, already positioned within a structure Tywin himself controls, serves that stability far better than a girl an ocean away who dreams of fire. A dragon on a leash, Tywin does not say, but the shape of it hangs in the air between them. Varys understands the shape, and for the first time in a very long time, the spider is genuinely uncertain. Because the argument is good. The argument is, in fact, precisely the argument he has spent his own life making. A controlled restoration, a managed peace, the right blood settled onto the throne without the ruin of war. It is his own philosophy, handed back to him wearing a lion's face, and he cannot immediately find the flaw in it. And that hesitation is all Tywin requires. The spider does not flee, not yet. He lingers. He remains at court, watching, weighing, his loyalties split cleanly down the middle, and that division is itself a kind of paralysis. And paralysis is time. And time is the one currency Tywin means to spend before anyone else can spend it first. Because Tywin has understood something in this conversation that Varys has not yet realized he revealed. Others know, or others will know, soon, on their own terms and to their own ends. The secret is no longer sealed within a single mind. It is leaking, and a secret that leaks must be seized before the leak becomes a flood. So Tywin makes his decision. He will wait no longer for grain and gratitude to do their slow work. He will reach for Jon Snow directly. What if the most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms decided the only way to secure a boy's loyalty was to arrive alone, in disguise, in the mud of a village that most lords pretended did not exist? That is precisely what Tywin Lannister does. He does not send a raven. He does not summon Jon Snow to a solar or a hall where the weight of Casterly Rock might do the persuading for him. He goes north instead, past the ruin of Winterfell, past the last holdfasts where men still remember his name with hatred, until the wall rises before him like a wound in the sky, pale and enormous, and utterly indifferent to the schemes of southern lords. Molestown is a poor place. It is little more than a scattering of hovels above a warren of dugout rooms, and Tywin moves through it wrapped in the dull gray wool of a wine merchant, his golden hair hidden, his hands roughened deliberately with dirt so they will not betray him. He has spent his life inside stone. Here there is only cold and smoke and the smell of unwashed men, and he endures it without complaint, because the endurance is itself part of the calculation. A man who travels this far, who lowers himself this much, communicates something no letter ever could. He communicates that the matter is worth the journey. Jon Snow comes to him uncertain, hand near his sword, eyes reading the room for threats the way a hunted animal reads a tree line. And Tywin, when the door is shut and the candle burns low between them, does not lie. That is the first surprise. He does not flatter. He does not offer. He tells the truth. He tells Jon Snow of Lyanna Stark, of the tower in the Red Mountains of Dorne, and the 3 Kingsguard who died defending it, and the sister who died within it with blood on her thighs and a promise pulled from her brother's lips. He tells him of Rhaegar Targaryen, of the prince who was not the abductor the songs made him, but something stranger and quieter, and no less ruinous. He lays each fact down like a coin on a table, unhurried, complete, and he watches the boy's face as the weight of them accumulates. He watches the moment the evasions of a dead man begin to rearrange themselves in Jon Snow's memory. The half-answers, the changed subject, the father who would say only that his mother's name would be known when the time was right, and who died with that time forever unarrived. And Tywin offers him nothing. That is the second surprise, and it is deliberate, and it is the cleverest thing he does. No crown, no castle, no army waiting beyond the trees. He offers the boy only a choice, and he frames the choice with a truth Jon cannot argue against. Others know, or others will, and when they learn what you are, they will decide your future for you. They will make you a banner or a corpse. Better then to decide first. Better to choose the shape of your own destiny before crueler hands press it into a shape of their own. Jon Snow does not fall to his knees. He does not weep or rage. He says he has taken a vow. He says the Watch takes no part in the wars of the realm, that he is done with the games of southern lords, that whoever his father was, he is a man of the Night's Watch and will die one. And he means it. Tywin can see that he means it. But Tywin can also see the thing beneath the words, the crack the truth has opened, the way the boy's eyes drift towards some memory of a cold stone crypt and a woman's carved face. And he knows the seed is planted, and seeds do not need permission to grow. He does not press further. That is the discipline of the moment. He has learned what he came to learn. Jon Snow cannot be bought. He cannot be threatened. He cannot be maneuvered into a corner and made to sign away his own will, because he does not want the things Tywin has spent a lifetime dangling before ambitious men. And this is the revelation that changes everything. The revelation Tywin carries back into the cold as his horse picks its way south along the frozen road. Every strategy he has ever employed assumes a man wants power and can be steered by the wanting. This boy does not, and so the boy cannot be controlled. He can only be chosen, which means the realm must be made to want him, not commanded, not tricked, prepared. The whole vast machinery of lords and small folk and septons and swords must be turned, slowly, patiently, until it faces the same direction. Tywin's hands tighten on the reins. For the first time in decades, he sets aside the knife of manipulation and reaches instead for something he has never truly trusted. He begins, quietly, to plan how a truth might be told. What if the plan a man makes in the quiet of a frozen road is overtaken by the very catastrophe he had only half believed in? What if the thing dismissed at court as a wildling's fever dream chooses this moment, precisely this moment, to become undeniable? The dead do not wait for men to finish their calculations. They come in a silence that is worse than any war drum, a silence Tywin will never witness with his own eyes, but will read in the ravens that arrive faster than he can order his thoughts. The wall does not fall, not yet, but the country beyond it empties of the living, and the living flee south with tales that no longer sound like tales. Fishing villages found frozen and standing. Riders who report movement in the tree line that does not warm the eyes at torchlight. And Jon Snow, who has spent years being disbelieved, is suddenly the only man in Westeros whose warnings arrive already proven. Tywin absorbs the news the way he absorbs all news. He does not exclaim, he calculates. Because here is the thing about catastrophe. It rewrites the ledger of every man who ever claimed to have foreseen it. The gold Tywin poured into the Watch, the grain trains, the smiths he sent north under a bookkeeper's pretense, all of it was a bet whose odds he never truly liked. Now the bet pays, not in coin, in something far rarer. In credibility. He is, overnight, the one great lord who spent treasure on a threat everyone else laughed at, and the realm's memory will be reshaped to make that spending look like wisdom rather than caution. He does not merely accept this reframing, he seizes it. The small council convenes in the gray light of a King's Landing morning, and Tywin stands where he has always stood, at the head of a table that has known 100 quiet murders of reputation. But he does not whisper today. He does not slide a rumor sideways into a receptive ear. He speaks plainly, and the plainness itself is the weapon, because these men have never heard him surrender the advantage of ambiguity. The North, he tells them, harbors a true-born son of Rhaegar Targaryen, a boy raised as a bastard of Stark, a boy who has stood on the wall while the rest of Westeros bickered over chairs. And the crown, he says, in the interest of the survival of every living soul beneath the seven, acknowledges him. The silence in the chamber is its own answer. He watches the faces the way a man watches a board. He sees Varys understand instantly, sees the spider recalculate a decade of hidden games in the space of a breath. He sees the maester's quill stop. He sees, in the stillness, the exact moment each man realizes that the secret is no longer a secret to be traded, but a proclamation with the weight of the throne behind it, and therefore a thing they can no longer sell, no longer wield, no longer own. Tywin has taken the most dangerous piece of information in the realm and burned away its danger by speaking it aloud on his own terms, in his own voice, at the moment most favorable to himself. This is the gamble. He knows it is a gamble. A hidden Targaryen is a knife anyone might inherit. A proclaimed Targaryen, endorsed by the crown, framed as the shield of humanity against an army of the dead, is something else entirely. He becomes not a threat to the order of things, but the centerpiece of a new order that Tywin himself has authored. And authorship, Tywin has always understood, is the deepest form of ownership. He does not need to control Jon Snow. He needs only to be the man who told the truth about him first, so that every subsequent event bends toward the story he has already written. The ravens go out that same day, dozens of them, scattering north and south and across the narrow sea, carrying the same words in the same measured hand. And Westeros staggers. At Dragonstone, Stannis reads the proclamation and feels the ground of his own claim shift beneath him, because a living Targaryen fighting the true enemy is a rival his righteousness cannot easily answer. In the north, lords who bent the knee to Robb and buried their sons in the war now read that the bastard they half pitied is a dragon's true-born heir, and they do not know whether to be furious or relieved. And far across the sea, in a place of heat and dust and slow-gathering strength, a young queen with 3 dragons will soon receive word that a nephew she never knew existed has been named before her, fighting a war she cannot yet see, wearing a legitimacy the crown has handed him. Every piece on the board must now move. Tywin has forced them to. He sits in his solar as the last raven lifts into the cold sky, and he does not smile. He simply waits to see which of them moves first. What if the greatest victory a man could win was one he would never live to enjoy? What if the final entry in a lifetime of ledgers was not a triumph he could hold in his hands, but a shape he pressed upon the world and then released, trusting the shape to hold long after his fingers had gone cold? The negotiations lasted through the turning of a season. They were not swift. Nothing that mattered ever was. In the great hall at King's Landing, and then in the smaller chambers where the true bargaining happened, The pieces circled one another with the wary patience of men who have all lost too much to lose more carelessly. The northern lords came south, with grievances stacked like cordwood, remembering the Red Wedding, remembering their dead. The Night's Watch sent men who cared nothing for thrones, and everything for the thing gathering beyond the wall. And the Crown, wearing the boy king's face and Tywin's mind, offered them a bargain that no one entirely trusted and no one could entirely refuse. The terms were simple, in the way that only carefully constructed things are simple. Tommen's crown would recognize Jon Snow as trueborn, as Aegon Targaryen, as heir by blood to a house the Baratheons had cast down. The North would keep its autonomy, its old gods, its own hand upon its own affairs. And in exchange, Jon would swear an oath, not to claim the Iron Throne, not yet. Not while the true war remained unfought. He would set aside ambition and take up duty, and he would bend every sword the North could raise toward the wall. Jon accepted. He did not want a crown. That, in the end, was what made him useful to a man who understood crowns better than anyone living. Tywin had spent a lifetime measuring the appetites of ambitious men, and here at last was one whose appetite pointed away from the very thing everyone else was starving for. A dragon who wished only to be a shield. It was almost enough to make the old lion believe in providence, and he did not believe in providence. So the banners rose, northern houses that had been ready to gut one another in grief, instead rode north together, and beside them marched men in black, and behind them came columns bearing the crown's own colors, gold on crimson, sent south to north by a hand who understood that a realm which will not fight for itself cannot be saved by any single hero. Jon's heritage became the standard they gathered beneath. Not the bastard of Winterfell, the heir who had chosen the living over the throne. Men followed that. Men died for that. And when the long night came at last, when the cold poured down over the wall like a tide that had waited 8,000 years to break, they held. Barely, at a cost that would be sung of for centuries. But they held, and the dead fell back, and the sun rose again over a world that had nearly ended, and had not. Tywin did not live to see the full peace. He had not expected to. He died some months after the long night, in his bed, in the winter, an old man whose body had finally exhausted the will that drove it. In the drawer of his solar, sealed still, lay the testament he had written when he first learned the truth, the letter that could have destroyed everything or saved everything. He never sent it. He never needed to. The truth had done its work through gentler channels, and the parchment stayed sealed, a weapon he had chosen not to fire, and that restraint was perhaps the most Lannister thing he ever did. Consider what he left behind. Jon ruled the North, keeping his oath, keeping the peace he had bled for. Tommen still wore the crown, a boy growing slowly into a reign, steadied by the framework his grandfather had built beneath him. And across the narrow sea, the last dragon was coming. Daenerys Targaryen turned her ships west toward a throne she believed was hers by right and by fire, unaware that the board had been rearranged, that a nephew she had never met now stood not as her rival, but as something far more dangerous to her ambitions and far more useful to her cause. Because that was the final entry in the Lion's ledger, not permanent peace. Tywin had never believed in permanent things. What he had secured, in his last calculated act, was this. When the last dragon came, House Lannister would not stand against her alone. It would stand beside a dragon of its own choosing, bound by blood and oath to the realm they had both fought to save. He had not made the future safe. No man could. He had only ensured that when it arrived, his house would meet it standing, And that was enough. The old lion had closed his final ledger, and the numbers, at last, had balanced. In the cold quiet of a Westeros that had survived, that balance held, and it was, for now, enough to let the world sleep. And this brings us to the end of this alternate history. If you enjoyed exploring how events might have unfolded differently, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. We dive into new stories from the world of Westeros every single day, imagining the choices, battles, alliances, and destinies that could have completely changed the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. And if you'd like to explore even more stories, our Lorekeeper members unlock a brand new exclusive alternate history every single week. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. What do you think would have happened next? Did this version of history end better than the original, or would you have taken the story in a completely different direction? Leave your ideas in the comments, because many of the best future stories come directly from your suggestions. Thank you so much for watching and for spending your time with me. I'll see you tomorrow with another alternate history from Westeros. Until then, be peace out.